Well, we have an action-packed day planned today. I know we've got people that are still popping in, but I'm going to kind of go ahead and get us started. So I just want to welcome our CMI family. I'm so excited to have all of you here. I'm so excited about this training event that we have planned today. The title of our event today is Strengthening Communities, Equipping Churches to Launch Marriage Ministries. And I know that looking around the room, I know that we all desire to help churches. And I've talked to so many of you on our monthly calls, and I've heard your passion for seeing communities grow stronger. And we all have that shared passion as well for seeing marriages in our communities become stronger. So I know that the content in this event today is going to be valuable for all of us across the country. And first and foremost, I just want to express how genuinely thrilled we are to see each and every one of you here. Your presence being here is just a testament to your unwavering commitment and to your commitment to make an impact on marriages and seeing your communities thrive. And so we are just honored to have such an incredible group of individuals joining us today. Today's event, like I said, it's going to be filled to the brim with valuable insights and inspiration. And we pray that you're going to be inspired and empowered and equipped to make a significant impact on your communities. Today, we get to hear from Carl, and we're going to get to hear from Jerry and Kate and Brady and Melissa. And of course, we want to hear from all of you, because this event would not be complete without your active participation. And one of our favorite things, I know it's one of my favorite things, is hearing from all of you. I just love it on our monthly calls. I love listening to all of you and hearing from all of you. So we've set aside a dedicated Q&A session at the end where we're going to give you the opportunity to ask our speakers questions and receive personalized guidance. So stick around for the Q&A at the end if you can. And then last, but certainly not least, we have an exciting surprise in store for you. We're going to be hosting a book giveaway today. And the book we have lined up for you is none other than Jerry and Kate's captivating and inspirational work, Forsaken. Now, this book is their personal story, and I had the privilege of hearing Jerry and Kate share part of their story earlier this week, and I'll just tell you, it's sure to captivate your hearts and minds, and I'm confident that you're absolutely going to love this book. As soon as I talked to them and I heard part of their story, right away, the first thing I did when I got off the call is I got on Amazon and I ordered my copy. So here's how that's going to work. For all of those who actively participate in today's Q&A session, your names are automatically going to be entered into our drawing. And then after the event's over, we'll conduct the drawing, and then we're going to announce the lucky winner on our CMI Slack channel. So be sure to engage in the session and seize the opportunity to win this fantastic book. So let's get ready for an incredible event filled with invaluable insights, uplifting stories, and a chance to win a copy of Forsaken by Jerry and Kate. We can't wait to see your active participation, and we wish you the best of luck in the drawing. But before we get started with our speakers today, I just want to welcome Mr. Ron McLain. We love Ron. Ron is with Fresno Healthy Marriage Coalition in Fresno, California, and he's going to open us in prayer. So Ron, whenever you are ready.
Great. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much today for your mercies, which are new. And we thank you, Lord, for the privilege it is for each of us to represent you as we fulfill our mission to help marriages thrive in our communities. So help us today to learn and then apply the great things that we're going to hear. We pray in your precious name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for your prayer, Ron. We appreciate that. So our first speaker today is Mr. Carl Caton. And as you know, Carl is the president and founder of Marriage Initiative. And he has a deep understanding of marriage ministries. And he's going to share from his wisdom and experience on strengthening communities, equipping churches to launch marriage ministries. So Carl, we're ready to learn. We are ready to learn from you.
All right. People, it's so great to be with you. It's been so fun to be on monthly calls and just track your progress and just just be a part of learning from you and all the great things that you're doing. Well, our leader, Dennis Stoica, is here today, and I'm going to start with a quote from the grant that he wrote just to kind of get us centered on what we're going to talk about today. And one of the things Dennis wrote in the grant is that a strategic purpose of every community marriage initiative is to encourage, promote, and support community-wide implementation of marriage ministries as a way to strengthen marriages and reduce countywide divorce rates. And I know that's the focus area of this grant. It's the focus on all what we're all working on together is to help these marriage ministries thrive in the churches of our community. And just to go a little deeper, just to say that each of you aspires to empower local churches to implement highly effective, self-sustaining marriage ministries balanced across all three areas of vision, skills, and support, and across all the ages and stages of the marital life cycle. So let's start with this question. How can we encourage, promote, and support marriage ministries in churches and parishes? And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've learned in San Antonio. We're still learning, and we're learning from you. And we thank you for the things that you're teaching and learning. And but these are 4 parts of our process that we use in San Antonio. These are ways that we've been available to serve marriage ministries. The first is just the whole process of building church relationships. And I'm not going to unpack building church relationships because 2 of our speakers are going to do that. The Angelos and Brady and Melissa Vandeberg are going to unpack how you build relationships. And I'm going to share with you a separate YouTube video that goes into a lot of depth on what we've learned about how to build church relationships. And so I'm not going to cover that today, but I'm going to cover these next 3 parts, which is serving and supporting marriage ministries, how we serve and support events, and then how we serve and support leaders. So we're going to talk about these 3 areas. What are the things that we've learned? So what are some of the ways we've tried to support the building of ministries, how we support the events, and how we support the leaders? So that's going to be the focus of today. And let me tell you at the very front, I'm going to share a whole lot of information with you. And it's going to be way too much information as it always is. So we're not anticipating that you're going to implement all these things right away in your work. But if there's something that I shared today that resonates with you, if maybe this might be a way that you can serve maybe some events that churches are hosting in your city, maybe there's a way that you can come alongside a church leader. If you can find 1 or 2 things to implement, that's a great way to approach this. So I want to start off by talking about how we've learned how to serve and support marriage ministry. So churches are the center point of how we deliver our services. So we empower people in local churches to do the work of marriage ministry. And I'm going to unpack 4 areas of how we serve those ministries. First, and this is set apart, is the first meeting. We have found that the first meeting with a church staff or with a lay couple from a church is so critical. So I'm going to go into a little bit more depth about what we try to accomplish in that first meeting, because that first meeting is so critical in us being able to move forward in serving this church. Then I'm going to unpack how we serve the processes, and then how we serve the programs, and ultimately how we serve the team. And so I'm going to unpack each of these. So let's dive right into serving marriage ministries in your local churches. That first meeting is always a fun and exciting meeting. It's something I always anticipate as with a lot of excitement. Is, you know, we've been developing a relationship with somebody at a church, maybe the staff member, maybe the pastor, maybe it's just a lay couple. And we get to have this first meeting where we realize, look, it looks like this is going to move forward in this local church. So I'm always excited about that first meeting, but the first meeting is really critical. It's a really critical beginning point. And one of the things that we always start with is we want to start by listening. We want to get to know them, and we want to hear their passion. Ultimately, we want to understand their story. What's behind this? Why are you so passionate about serving marriage ministries in the church? And as we're at the meeting, we want to kind of do an assessment of the capabilities of the team. You know, what are we looking at here? Is this a couple that's been in marriage ministry? We know couples have been in marriage ministry in churches for 40 years, and we know couples that have been in the work of marriage ministry for 1 week. And so we want to assess the capability of the team, because that's really important on how we're going to move forward. The third thing, and this is vital, really want to learn in a really sensitive way, what's the level of support that they have in their church? Is this something where that senior pastor is fully on board and is really behind this? Or are we going to have to win the support of the senior pastor? It's really key to knowing how to move forward when we know that. And then let's talk about their goals. Just kind of ask great questions to hear about where do they feel like this is going? Do they have a passion just for helping premarital couples? Or are they struggling with a lot of divorces in their church? Where are they? What are their short-term goals? What are their long-term goals? But ultimately, I'm always thinking about in this first meeting, I'm always thinking about these two things. How can we start small and keep it simple? Because we have a duty not to overwhelm people. We're going to begin a journey of walking alongside these people. So we don't want to overwhelm them at the start. We want to start small, keep it simple. But the most important question to pray through is, Lord, how are you working in this? That is so critical to understand. That first meeting is a fun and exciting meeting, but it's a really critical beginning point of that first step. Now, as we're serving, supporting the growth of this marriage ministry, I like to think of it in two parts. Part of this is that we serve the process of building a marriage ministry, but we also serve the development and implementation of programs. So I'm going to unpack those separately because kind of the way that we serve that is done in different ways. So as you think about the process of building a marriage ministry, we come alongside them to help them walk through a season of prayer for direction and vision. A lot of times they might want to do a church-wide assessment of like, where are we? Some churches, they want to start with, well, let's identify and have a better understanding of what's the need in our church. That might be, do we have needs to serve the pre-engaged couples? Do we need to serve the enriching process? Or maybe, again, do we have a lot of struggling couples? So we want to do an assessment of where we are. The third thing is we've got to cast vision for the senior leadership. It is so rare for a church to have a marriage ministry, and it's so important that we bring the language and our experiences and what we've seen really work in churches. Maybe if you're serving a new couple, they've been to some events and they want to bring marriage ministry to their church, but they don't really understand how important it is to have that support of your senior leadership. We want to help communicate to that senior leadership why it's important that we serve these marriages. One of the people that I admire most that's in the world of helping children, one of the most respected people in my city, this is her saying, she says, if you really want to help the kids, you better start learning how to help the parents. And there's nothing more important than the family leadership team, and casting a vision for that for senior leadership is so important. The third thing is we want to help them with the process of a marriage ministry starting plan. And Brady and Melissa Vandeberg, who are on this call, they do an amazing job. They have developed a marriage ministry training workshop that helps churches develop that starting plan. It helps them do an assessment of what they have available to them, and it helps a church frame up a vision for their ministry, and it helps them know how to move forward with this starting plan. I can't tell you how much I admire Brady and Melissa and their ability to do this. They've come to San Antonio and done this for our city. It's been amazing. The next thing is that we need the leadership to understand how we're going to come around them, how we're going to support them as a community marriage initiative. For every one of you, there is such a valuable role that you play as a support system to these marriage ministries. And certainly now they're going to need to build a team. So you need to start working on that. I'm going to unpack that more later. And then for down the road, you might want to help them develop a year-round plan. You may want to help them with budget and goals. These are some things that are related to the process of building a marriage ministry and how we support that. But also you got to think about the programs, right? In fact, a lot of church people, this is where their mind goes first. It's like, we're going to run some programs. So which programs are we going to use? And what programs are we going to use for preparation and for enrichment and for struggling couples? And so, as Dennis said on our last training call, it's really important for us as community leaders to be familiar with what are some of the best programs that are available to churches, because we act like a consultant at sometimes to help them think through what what can they adopt and implement in their church that can be really helpful to them? So we think about the process, but we also got to be fluent in the programs and help them adopt and launch those programs. But this is so key, is that for every marriage ministry in a church, they really need help building a team. You've got to help that local team understand how they can best work with their pastor. You know, everybody laments that they're not getting announcements from the pulpit and they're not finding their program in the bulletins, and you know, why are we not doing, you know, things? It's because churches have dozens of programs, sometimes hundreds of programs. And so you got to figure out how you're going to work with your leadership team. But more important than that is how you're going to grow and develop the marriage ministry team. And there's a lot that you can do, you can share as kind of a consultant to this process on how they can go about doing that. And I'm going to unpack that more later. And then finally, how to keep this ministry gospel-centric. I think that's really key to the team development portion. So we've said there's the process of serving, the development of it, there's the programs, there's the team, but then I want to go deeper on recruiting this team, and I'm going to call this a skill focus. As we've talked with you on our monthly calls, one of the things that we've heard from you again and again is that in churches, they're really struggling to recruit this local team. In fact, this seems to be one of the biggest roadblocks we face in helping these marriage ministries start. And I think what I've experienced, and you guys have experienced this as well, and you have a lot to share in this area, but sometimes I think we're looking for too perfect of the right couple, right? One of the great joys of this experience for me, it was when I met a guy named Robert Runke. And Robert Runke was working in Catholic parishes and recruiting couples to be a part of marriage ministry in Catholic parishes. In over 47 years, Robert had recruited 2,000 couples into marriage ministry. And when I asked Robert, I said, Robert, what are the secrets of what you learned over 47 years? What are the secrets you would share with others? And he said this, he says, we make this too complicated. He said, to recruit 2,000 couples, this is what I was looking for. He said, I look for a couple that attends church together, that sits close, and speaks respectfully to one another. Now, that doesn't seem like that's the list that we're all thinking about, right? We're looking for rock stars, right? We're looking for somebody that'll, you know, hit home runs. It's like, no, he says, we overthink this because what most couples respond to when you ask them if they'd be involved in marriage ministry, most couples say is they say, we don't feel qualified. Well, right, none of us are qualified, right? And so think about this as what social scientists called a threshold experience. In other words, how can you help them take an easy first step? And what would that look like? And this is what Robert Runke does, is he starts as simple as this. He says, I've recruited couples to do one thing. He said, I ask a couple, would you be willing to meet with an engaged couple for 6 weeks? Would you meet with an engaged couple once a week for 6 weeks and just walk through the process of engagement with them, not to teach them anything, but just to be a friend during that process? Now, how many people would be qualified to do that? In fact, how many people would actually enjoy doing that? And I would say almost everyone enjoys doing that. In fact, of the 2,000 couples Robert recruited, this is one of the things he said he heard most as feedback. He said, these couples, what he calls sponsor couples, he said, these sponsor couples told me this more than anything. And they said this, they said, we got more out of the process than the engaged couple did. Ann McKenna, I see you nodding. You probably experienced that. You and Bill have probably done that, and you know what that feels like. And that, I think we just raised the bar too high. We need to help recruit a team, but we got to keep it simple, and we got to make a simple, easy ask to help recruit that team. Okay, so we've said that part of the work that we do supporting churches is supporting the process of building the marriage ministry. But one of the things, I'm going to talk about this in a whole separate category, is that we support events. And let me unpack why we do this. When we first started here in San Antonio in 2009, we jumped into the middle of creating events for marriages. And it was honestly, in a way, it was a disaster. It was exhausting, begging churches to allow us to use their venue, coordinating the 1,000 different things that are necessary to bring and host an event. And what we decided after about 3 years of just about killing ourselves doing that, we said, you know what? Let's don't organize events. Let's support churches as they organize events. Because what you're creating is a decentralized way of having marriage events happen in your city. And you guys have heard me say this before, but last year, or let me go back to 2019. In 2019, I think we had about 190 marriage events in the city of San Antonio. And most of those events were organized and supported by others. And our job was just simply to support those events. And that put us in a much more natural role where we were able to leverage our strengths, and church leaders were able to leverage their strengths, and they felt a greater sense of ownership. It really created a beautiful thing. And so we think of our of events in San Antonio. We want to create as many events as possible, but we want to play the role of the support system to those events. And so here's some of the things that we do. These are 6 things that we do to support churches, is that we help them with planning, we help them with budgeting, we help with logistics and promotion, we help them on the day of the event, and we help them in the follow-up of the event. And I'm going to just quickly unpack each of these. So in the planning of the events, now look, every church is different. Some churches have a vibrant event planning team, and they need very little support in planning. And some churches have nothing in that area, and we come alongside them. But again, we play a supportive role. We have a support role that helps them plan these events. And these are some of the things that we help them do: is cast a vision, select a speaker, develop a call to action, recruit an event team, help find financial support. This next item is so key to us. This has been the failure or success of an event, is we want to be very, very clear who owns this event. Because if a church is doing an event in their church and they think they're helping us, they don't own that event, and they're not going to run every trap they have. They're not going to do everything they can to make that successful. So we are very clear with the church. This is your event. You own this, and we're going to do everything we can to support you. But that changes the whole dynamic of how people host and carry out their events, is to make sure they understand this is their event. And finally, you might want to use some of your grant money to help support it. We tell churches a lot of times that we'll provide a social media ad that reflects roughly $10 per person. For a number of years, we did $6 a person. So if you're going to do a marriage event that's going to have 100 people attending, then our initiative will spend $600 on social media ads to help support you. But ultimately, it's your job to fill the sanctuary. But we're going to come alongside you and do what we can do to help support you. That's really key. The budgeting process is pretty simple. Sometimes we come alongside them to help create an event budget and a marketing budget. A lot of times they need help with that, because you as a community leader, you're in the middle of a lot of events that are happening. You're seeing some of the best practices. You can come alongside them. How about logistics? A lot of times they might need help with some music or Spanish translation or registration or a volunteer team. Sometimes we'll do a save the date for them. A lot of times we'll help with logistics. Definitely, more than anything, we want to help with promotion through communication, through print media, through traditional media, through digital media. We really want to get out there, and we want to do everything we can to make sure this event is successful. And why is it? It's because if a church leader or if a lay couple at a church, if they go through all the time and energy to do an event, if that event is successful, they'll be excited. They'll want to do it again. And that's what we want church leaders to do. It. We want you to repeat those events. But if the event is small and disappointing, then a lot of times they won't do another event. So we remind ourselves, we want to do everything we can to make sure this church leader or this lay couple is successful in in hosting this event. And then there's event day, and there's so many things to do on event day, ways that we can be supportive. I'm not going to walk through all these things, but it's great if you can have a presence there, if you can have a display table, if you can have maybe some giveaways that familiarize people with what you're doing in the city. A lot of great things that you can do. You can come back to this slide later and take a look. And then follow up. Man, we just want to express appreciation. Wow, what a blessing it is if a church leader or a lay couple will host an event and have 200 or 300 couples show up. We want to just indicate how much we appreciate them, and we want to do that in a really special way. Okay, so we said that we serve the process of building a ministry. We serve the events that are happening, but we also want to serve the leaders. It's really important that we do this. So who are the church leaders that we think about? Well, we think about the senior pastor, maybe somebody that's on staff, maybe the lay couples, the leaders, maybe a pastoral care leader, maybe women's ministry leader. But we want to serve the marriages of those church leaders. You know, one of the biggest roadblocks to helping marriage ministries get started is when the marriage of a church leader is not in a great place. And I remember I met one day with a particular leader, and this actually was a business leader, but this kind of applies. And I was talking to this business leader about supporting marriages. And the business leader, when I finished my little pitch there, his head fell, and he said, "Carl," he said, if I stepped up to support helping you help marriages," he said, "my wife would ask me, why am I not investing in my own marriage?" Wow, that hurts. And there's a lot of marriages in church leadership that are under a lot of pressure. COVID just really amped up all of those things. So we want to come alongside church leaders with help and support for their marriages, and to support them in their role as they support marriages. So remember this when you're working alongside church leaders. Remember that each church leader is driven by what I call natural motivations. You know, most senior pastors, while they care deeply about marriage, their highest motivation isn't marriage ministry. It's discipleship and evangelism, right? So remember that. And when you're talking to a church leader, communicate in their love language. Help a senior pastor see that one of the most effective ways to reach people with the gospel is to serve marriages. I tell people in San Antonio, I say, you know what the biggest evangelism event of the year is? It's Weekend to Remember. Why is it? It's because at Weekend to Remember, we have 1,000 people that show up, 80 people will give their life to Christ, and 270 people will recommit their life to Christ. Show me any event happening in San Antonio where on a single day you have that sort of evangelism happening, and I'll show you that's a true evangelism event. So I'm reframing it, right? I'm reframing marriage ministry in language that appeals to a church leader's natural motivations. That's key. Also remember that each of us have a highest and best role to play. And I think we all understand that. We don't want a senior pastor organizing a marriage event, right? The highest and best role that they play is to preach it from the pulpit, to use their influence to make sure that they're effective. And again, thirdly, communicate to the role that they play. And then use language that's respectful of their church culture. This gets into the world of, like, if you're serving a Catholic church or a Protestant church, use their language. Catholics call their churches parishes. So I respect their language, and I want to use language that is respectful to them. I want to use language that they understand, that they traffic in, and so I want to meet them where they are. So I want to use language that does so. And I also want to remind myself, and I want to remind church leaders, that great marriage ministries require time and resilience and consistency. And this is actually a reminder to me that these marriage ministries are not going to happen overnight. They're going to happen over many years of steady, faithful service. And we want church leaders to know that we're going to come alongside them and we're going to support them when as this church ministry develops. And we're going to be available to them. You know, one of the things, this is not in my slide deck, but one of the things that has been most helpful to church leaders is I get calls, and you get calls like this too, from a pastor that says, Carl, he says, I appreciate what you're doing with the marriage initiative. I'm sorry that we haven't been really involved with that, but I got a huge problem. I got a deacon couple who's very significant to our church leadership that just told me they're getting a divorce. Can you come in and help me? Man, that's when we drop everything and we show up and we say, how can we help you? We're going to help you get through this season. And we're going to love you by serving you. And we're going to serve you by serving the most immediate and pressing need that you have. That's when you're really serving church leaders. So the local church is this most amazing thing that God has given us. And I love this quote from Ray Stedman. He says, despite all the obvious flaws and weaknesses and hypocrisies and sins and excesses, the church has been the most powerful force of good on the face of the earth. God created marriage as his first institution, and he created church as his second institution. And we have this unique need to represent his first institution to the great leaders of his second institution. Wow, that sounds like we're just in the middle of a move of the gospel. So thank you for letting me share just briefly, or maybe not so briefly, about what we're learning about how to serve marriage ministries in churches. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, Carl. And you stayed actually under your time, so you're doing great. As always, we really enjoyed hearing from you. Thank you for sharing your insights. Well, up next, we're going to have our masterclass led by our incredible duo, Jerry and Kate Angelo of Vanguard Marriage and Family Advocates in Southwest Missouri. And they're going to guide us through the art of building relationships. They'll unveil the secrets to creating and maintaining lasting partnerships through networking within our communities. And I spent a lot of time talking to these two over the last couple of weeks, and I know that you're going to be really inspired by their expertise and their practical advice. So Jerry and Kate, we eagerly await to hear from you.
Hey, thank you everybody for coming out to this class. And Carl, I really liked what you said in your presentation. As far as being a friend to a couple, that's so true. And I think sometimes we try to get so official that we kind of overthink it, and people are like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And you're exactly right. Just be a friend. People are so much more responsive. And then it's like, hey, yeah, let's do this thing. So that's such a great insight. And, you know, if what Carl was talking about today, a lot of people may be watching this going, wow, that's a tall order, or how do we get there? That's really great advice, and I want to do that, but maybe they're not quite to that point yet. And if there was a prerequisite for what he just said, this presentation might be it. But I do want to start off by saying thank you for the kind words and for the opportunity to speak into your lives today, and also for my lovely wife, Kate. She did an amazing job with the slide deck. She is such a great helpmate, so much more than that. I just wanted to say thank you, honey. Love you.
You're welcome.
Our presentation today is about building relationships and creating and maintaining lasting relationships for partnerships through networking in your community. And I want to begin by saying, we were made for relationships, and Matthew 22 and 28 talk about the great command and the great commission. And I say, why are we here? We're here to love God, to love others, and to preach the gospel to every creature. That pretty much sums up what we're going for there. But that also means that it's all about relationships. And in order to maximize our full potential and fulfill our God-given vision, identity, and purpose, we must have an awareness that this is learned through some emotional intelligence skills to create and maintain every relationship that we find ourselves in. We have to be God aware. We have to be we have to be aware of our relationships with our spouses and our kids, and we have to be other aware. We have to have a great sense of awareness if we're going to maximize our full potential of that goal. That brings me to the next slide, are the goals of networking. Networking is huge. For the last 27 years or so, I've been a senior level network engineer, and it's funny that I gravitated to that because I really believe that the skills that God planted in my heart were networking people, not technology. And so it's been a really fun transition into that as we do more and more marriage ministry, and we're focusing more of 100% focus in that area. But the goals of networking, again, why are we here? We're here to bring God glory. We're here to expand his kingdom. We're here to meet and connect with people. Our networking goals also include building lasting connections, strengthening your support system, and expanding the reach of your ministry and influencing people. I mean, if we're not influencing people for Christ and for his purpose, I'm assuming that all of us here on the call, we have been called to marriage ministry, and that's our conduit to reach people for Christ. And I often say that we catch people for Christ, or we catch these married couples for Christ, and that's just our avenue. Other people have other lanes, they're doing other things, but we are expanding the reach of our ministry and influencing people through marriage ministry. So how do we get started? Well, you got to have a plan, right? So let's develop a plan to build authentic relationships within your community. That means being intentional, being prepared, being prayerful, being courageous to overcome any reluctance that you might have, being present, and being strategic. And these next slides will go into a little bit more detail. I'm always talking about how we need to be more intentional. We need to, whenever we're making decisions, we need to do it with purpose and don't just go through the motions. If you're going to do a thing, or if you're going to attend an event, then you need to consider the following. You need to maybe you are going to attend some prayer gatherings. Maybe you might go to a city forum or some rallies, maybe a pregnancy care center. Go to networking events. Go to pastor meetings, and if there aren't any pastor meetings happening, create your own and invite pastors to them. Get involved in your city and your community. Jesus said that he didn't come to save the healthy, he came to save the sick and the lost. So I know that there's value in cultivating strong marriages in our churches, but there's such a great harvest available in the secular community that if we could foster some of those relationships and get them plugged into a church, then we're fulfilling the Great Commission. There's also many local business gatherings that are helpful, and the scripture that comes to mind for me is 1 Corinthians 31, which is, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. And that's being intentional. And honey, is there maybe a comment on this slide that you might want to add to that?
Well, I think a lot of people need to know it's not difficult for you to go into a place and participate, especially like a pregnancy care center. Sometimes you can go there and volunteer, and you can meet like-minded people there. You can go and speak at any little local networking event that they might have, and tell them about your nonprofit or your ministry, and tell them, you're really trying to get involved in the community. So a lot of people might look at these slides and say, you have a lot of political figures here. Why are you with these political figures? Well, actually, a lot of the times they are coming across a room at a different event that they attended, and they're coming over to talk to us. So we aren't really at a political rally whenever we're in some of these pictures. They're just coming over and saying, hey, we hear you are active in your community. You are trying to lower the divorce rate. You guys are have you met this pastor over here? And so, so we say, look for events, like what's happening around you, what is happening in your community, what's happening in your state, in your county, and try to attend some of those, be intentional about the ones that you're going to.
In order to build strong relationships, Carl was talking earlier about that's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to just, snap your fingers and have a marriage ministry. Even if one is handed over to you, it may work for a while, but if you aren't investing in your relationships with key people and leaders, then you're going to have a hard time having a sustained ministry for many months and years to come. And so, again, this presentation is about how important it is that you have these relationships. And, again, it takes time to build, because that's where you have trust. And it takes time to trust. You're not going to just trust somebody, again, instantly. So it's going to take time. You're going to have to invest time. You're going to have to invest that those moments with them where you're getting to know people, because over time you'll build trust and you'll build a strong relationship. I mean, that's not anything different than when we got married or our relationship with the Lord. It's over time, it's over trust, and that's why these people are crossing the room. It's because we've invested time with them. They've seen the fruit that we've produced, and they know that it's valuable for the kingdom, and they want to be a part of it. And that's how you want to position yourself. You want to position your ministry in such a way that people are coming to you and looking to you for help or for partnership. And so you got to be prepared for that. And when a lot of times when we're going to events or a gathering or whatever it is, you kind of need to know, well, who is the audience and what do you want to accomplish? Who is going there? It might be a business meeting, it might be a city leadership meeting, it might be a pastor's meeting. But at any rate, whatever it is, you need to study the people of those that you might meet. Maybe maybe there's that keynote speaker up there and you're like, wow, I'd really like to meet them. Well, yeah, go meet them. Go find the host who is running the show, and go find them, go talk to them. Obviously you don't want to be a pest about it, but you never know what kind of opportunities could be available there. But again, being prepared, you need to craft your elevator pitch, right? A lot of times you might get 60 seconds to talk to somebody. So you can't sit there and, and drag on for 10, 20 minutes when they only have a minute or two of their time. So you want to make a lasting impression with what you're doing. So have that ready. If you don't have an elevator pitch in less than 60 seconds, then I suggest that you start working on that right away, because that is something that could really catch somebody's attention. Have your business cards handy. I know in the age of technology, there's all kinds of things. You can bump your phone or whatever it is, but I think business cards work really great too. You can write on the back. Have some kind of method of communicating how to get in contact with somebody. And also decide if you should bring any other materials. Maybe you bring an iPad so you can take notes, or maybe you want to record what's being said at a meeting. You need to know, or you need to decide who is going to take the lead on introductions. Who's gonna, is it going to be Kate? Is it going to be me? Or if you're with somebody else, who's going to be who's going to take photos if there's an important moment, like, if you look here, if I hadn't captured these images, then you guys wouldn't have been able to see them. And why that's important is because when we go and post on social media, people are looking at that, and I have people all the time come up to me and say, oh yeah, I saw you guys and it's really amazing the work that you're doing. And I'm like, well, why didn't you comment, or why didn't you like? It's like, I didn't know that they were looking at it, but it does have an impact. So taking photos, saving them for social media, you're in the moment, in that particular moment for a reason. You need to be ready for it. And I don't know if this happens to you, but I'm so horrible with names. You need to figure out some way to navigate around the dreaded I forgot their name moment. And so Kate and I, we have a little system there sometimes, for that rare occasion that we might forget somebody's name. But Be prepared. Be prepared. Be prayerful, right? 1 Thessalonians 5:17 says that we should be praying without ceasing. We also need to be a willing and prayerful vessel. And when we were counseling couples not too long ago, I would always say that when you're a willing vessel and the Holy Spirit is working through you in that moment, you can't help but get some of that on you. You're going to be blessed, but God does the work. We just lay it at his feet and he does the work. You also need to be praying how you can create your own prayer event. And if you look at some of these pictures here, we've had the opportunity and blessing to pray with, there's a governor of Oklahoma. He's praying there with us and receiving some support from us. Governor Parson, we got Congressman Burleson, Secretary of State Ashcroft, and there's so many people that we've had the privilege of doing that to. And again, it takes time building that relationship to get those opportunities where they trust you. And again, you want to be the group or organization that people turn to in times when they need prayer, or when you have a marriage and family opportunity to reach the community. You constantly want to be building up your resume for those moments, so that you can be put into play at those at the time of the game when you need to be there. Find a way to pray for your leaders in your community. Again, maybe that's building your own prayer event. Pray on your way to the events, and when you're doing that, don't forget to ask, who do you want me to meet, Lord? Who is there? Somebody that you want me to meet? And if there's somebody that has a need, well, pray in that moment with those who have a need. When people are like, yeah, I need prayer, a lot of times it's real easy to be like, sure, I got you. We'll be praying for you. No, take that moment, seize that moment and pray with them, and see what the Lord does. And that kind of flows into the other point there, is ask others how you can pray for them. Pray for them and pray for them in the moment. Ask for discernment on who you should follow up with. If you're at a prayer event or whatever event it is, or marriage event, ask for discernment. Lord, I met these folks. How do you want me to connect with them again? And again, don't forget, pray always without ceasing. One of my favorite scriptures, Joshua 1:9, be courageous. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Don't be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Be bold and courageous, so that you will overcome your reluctance and be able to introduce yourself. My gosh, if you're going to do a thing, then do it right. Seize the moment, seize that opportunity. And sometimes you got to be bold and courageous. You may not want to do it, or your flesh may be like, oh, this is embarrassing, but so what? If the Lord calls you to do it, you shouldn't hesitate. The best way to start a conversation is with a smile and an introduction. And you should always ask genuine questions about those that you meet. Like, what brought you to this event, and how did you hear about it? What brought you to it? And if you remember earlier, I talked about studying your host and your speaker. Well, that's where that comes in. Do your homework. Go to their website. Figure out who they are, where they're coming from. I always tell Kate, we got to be careful who we're hitching our wagon to. So we do our homework on that. You should be doing that, and always wait in line to greet the speaker. Even if it's a long line, greet the speaker, and be ready with the short introduction and pitch. Get that elevator pitch ready and get in line quickly, so you don't have to wait so long. But I can't tell you how many times Kate and I have been waiting in line, and we've met people in line that later on we partnered up with for some group or meeting or purpose or whatnot. So introduce yourself to people in line. You never know who the Lord's going to place in your path. And take photos. Take photos of the moment, but also so that you can remember the people that you meet, so that you don't forget to follow up with them. Even Zacchaeus, the hated Zacchaeus, he got to host a dinner party for Jesus, all because he took the initiative to make himself known to him. But little did he know that it was what was in his heart as an invitation to Christ that meant the most, not the dinner invitation, but the heart invitation. And while people can't see our heart, they will pick up on the fruit that we produce from it, and they will respond. Be present. Remember why you're there in the first place. You know, you also need to be thinking about what can you learn from the event that you're attending, right? So sometimes you can go to these events, but what can you learn? Like, how are they doing their marketing? How did they set it up? What does their green room look like? What is the, how do they set the stage up, and what's the flow? What's the format? What's the all of the paperwork and things? How are they doing that? Maybe you can learn something. Maybe you just learn one thing that could be a difference maker in your ministry. Figure out who is there that you could meet or honor at the event. Maybe you could help serve the host at that event or a future event. Maybe you can introduce somebody else, and maybe you can introduce somebody else to another important person, and that could be a benefit of widening your network. And definitely make sure that you are achieving your goals by working together with at least one person in the room. Just show up, even if you don't feel like it, because you never make the shots you don't aim for, and you'll never know the blessing that you're missing if you aren't present. Next one, be strategic. I'm always asking, is this a good time of our resources? Should we invest resources in what we're doing? Kate and I, something that we do almost all the time, right before we go, is we are always positively revisiting, why are we doing this? Okay, you want to tell them a few moments about how we, kind of our little process before we go to an event?
Yeah, we're probably running out of time, so I'll just kind of quickly say, we do have that conversation when we get in the car. We pray first, and then we say, what hat are we wearing? Who are we going to see? Why are we going here? And then, like we say, we go over how are we going to introduce ourselves? What's our elevator pitch? We'll rehearse it in the car, and then we will make sure that that we have our roles figured out before we go, to make sure that it's worthwhile.
Yeah, and something that is super important. I learned this a long time ago, and it's just been an amazing addition to our service, really, is when you meet somebody, always ask what you can do for them. How can you serve them? What can I do to help you in your ministry? But don't ask what they can do in return. And so many times people are just blown away. They're like, you want to help me? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And that can be a good way to start off a new relationship. But never forget, always show up. And we're getting down to the end here. But Proverbs 16:9 says that a man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. And a quick little way that's worked in our lives. There's been so many examples. I just put one in here. We met Ron Deal at a speaking engagement one time, and through the building of that relationship, he encouraged us to finish a book that we were writing that is about our testimony of ministry. And that led to getting on the Family Life Today radio program, and that led to speaking at Weekend to Remember. And it's just like, if I hadn't or if Kate and I hadn't went to that marriage conference and spoke there, because there was a million reasons not to do it, but we went and did it anyway, it led to these amazing things. And then over on the right side, these are all the other things that came after it. We've held date night comedy shows. We've spoke at different panels for marriage. We're doing a marriage conference next week, and it's just and the people that the Lord has brought to us because we were present, because we were being faithful in the Lord, because we were intentional, because we were prepared, because we were prayerful, because we were courageous, because we were present, because we were strategic. We were able to do all these things. And this is our last slide here. Kind of my little elevator pitch that we give is I talk about how our ministry stands on 4 pillars. And those 4 pillars are that we help people to partner with us for statewide prayer initiative, statewide marriage initiative, a statewide public service and leadership, and also community events. And we also use our skills and our coaching to help other pastors and leaders in churches. We try to equip them so that they will be a successful partnership in what we're trying to accomplish for the kingdom.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jerry and Kate, for taking the time to share with us today. The information was very valuable. I'm sure everybody got some nuggets from that they can take with them. Up next on our agenda, we're honored to hear from Brady and Melissa Vandeberg of Wyoming Strong Families in Natrona County, Wyoming, and they're going to share an exciting testimony with us. So Brady and Melissa, you have our undivided attention.
Thanks, Stephanie. I just want to take a moment before Melissa shares a really cool movement story that hopefully will inspire you guys. But it is such a blessing to be part of this group. You know, to work with and under the tutelage of giants like Dennis and Carl and the team at Sammy, it truly is a gift. And every time we meet, we realize we're amongst many giants. And thank you, Jerry and Kate, for what incredible work you've put into and covered all the details. That was fantastic. And that helps us not get into a moment and look back and say, man, I wish we'd have been better prepared, because you've lined out all the details. So that's awesome. And what a treasure. You guys at Sammy ought to start charging us every week to be part of this. There's so much value in these weeks. And we truly feel we are out of our class. But yes, we are Brady and Melissa Vandeberg. We are missionaries with Family Life. We are blessed to be able to work alongside Sammy and bring a Weekend to Remember to San Antonio. And we're also the founders of Wyoming Strong Families, centered in Casper, Wyoming, but hopefully affecting and impacting marriages and families across the state of Wyoming.
It's crazy because I had shared this story with Carl and Stephanie on our meeting last week, and they said, wow, that just lines up directly with what we're talking about this week. So we have an event in our city called Love Your City, where all the churches, I shouldn't say all, but about half the churches in our community come together and just serve the city, go out and find community service projects, picking up garbage, helping elderly. And through that city event, I ended up painting down at the Crisis Pregnancy Center. And so just like you said, Jerry, you just go out and you serve in your community, but we are also obviously at the breakfast that morning networking with a lot of pastors from our city. So it's just an amazing opportunity to visit and talk with people. But through that, helping paint at the Crisis Pregnancy Center, had some great conversations and ended up in a meeting with their president there. And she, I was doing the humble inquiry and just asking her, as you work with these young single moms, and I was misfocused on the young single moms. I said, what are the needs that these young moms have? And she says, well, you know what? She says, most of these young ladies that are coming in now, their boyfriends are coming in with them. They're cohabitating usually, and they've got a baby on the way. And I said, oh, wow. Well, what do you see as these young couples? What are their needs? And, she said, well, we're giving them all the Baby and Me Foundation. But she says, relationship wise, they're on pretty rocky ground usually. And she said, they need relationship skills. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's our alley, right? And so I was able to step in and say, hey, how could we come along and serve these young couples? I said, we have marriage mentors trained in our city who are just relationship coaches. Do you think your couples would be interested in being partnered with relationship coaches and learning relationship skills? And so, of course, she was like super excited about that. She says, I'm going to add this to our Baby and Me program as part of our programming that we offer to these couples. And so we're working to administrate that and get that going. But just an example of what Jerry and Kate were talking about, networking across the city, following prospects and leads, but ultimately just following where God is at work, and then just showing up and saying, how can we help? And I love that question of how can we serve you in what you're already doing in the community to make your work more effective? And that's just where that one led us. So it was fun and exciting.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing with us. We really appreciate it. And so I want to wrap up today's event by giving you a little bit of details on our exciting virtual event that we have coming up with Shanti and Jeff Belton. And I know that we've talked to many of you about it, but I just wanted to give the final details on the date and time on that. So Jeff and Shanti, they felt like the Lord was speaking to them to just reach out and pour into the marriages of pastors and leaders and communities. And they felt like the best way to reach as many leaders as possible is by partnering with our CMI project, because they know that all of you are the ones that have connections with local pastors, you have connections with church leaders and local counselors. So they're going to do this virtual event for us that's targeted on the marriages of those on the front lines doing the work of the ministry. And the event is going to be held on Tuesday, August 1st at 12 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be a 1-hour teaching, and the title is Putting the Happily Back in Ever After. And it'll be followed by an anonymous 30-minute Q&A. And Jeff has created a registration page for us to register for the event. And I'm going to be posting that link on Slack for all of us to share with the leaders in our communities. And when you click on the link, it's going to take you to a video of Shanti and Jeff, and they're sharing kind of the heart behind the event. And then at the end of the video, there's an image that pops up at the end. And if you click on that, it'll take you to the registration page. You'll register for the event, and then you'll be sent a Zoom link to use the day of the event. I believe that link will be sent out about 48 hours before the event occurs. And there are a couple different ways that you can facilitate this event in your community. We have different CMIs who are doing it in different ways. You can gather local leaders and maybe do like a lunch, and together as a group, you can watch. Or you can send it out to everyone and let everybody join individually in their own homes. Either way you choose to facilitate the event, I know that it's going to be a real blessing to our pastors and our leaders and all of our communities. And use this as a way for you to connect with them and let them know that they are important and that they're important to the community. So use it as a way to connect and let them know that you want to give back to them for all that they're pouring out into the community. And then I also just want to really briefly mention that if you haven't already joined our Slack workspace, we are going to be starting to use that a lot more for like special announcements, for networking, Q&A sessions, and giveaways. So if you're not already a part of it and would like to be a part of it, please let me know and I'll send you a link to join that. And then lastly, today we want to end with a Q&A session for anybody that had questions for our speakers. And remember that anybody who participates in the Q&A is going to get their name entered into a drawing for a chance to win Jerry and Kate's book, Forsaken. And we understand if you're not able to stay, so if you need to hop off, that's totally fine. We're going to be posting the entire training video on our YouTube page following the event, so you'll be able to watch any part that you missed. So for the Q&A, how this is going to work is if you would just raise your virtual hand on your screen, and you'll see at the bottom of your screen, it just says reactions. And if you click on that, you'll see some emojis. And then just underneath the emojis, it says raise hand. And if you'll raise that virtual hand, I'll go around the room and we'll try to get to everyone's questions. So it looks like, Tom, you have your hand raised.
Yes, great presentations. A couple questions for Carl. One is, as a community marriage initiative, do you put your name, or are you, in terms of sponsoring events with the organization which is taking the lead, would you be reticent, or do you have a standard by which you would or wouldn't put your name as a sponsoring organization? And then the second question, you talked about coaching churches on developing their marriage program. I think you mentioned some resources there, but I also came to mind is the Married People book by Ted Lowe, which kind of lays it out. Is that something you'd recommend, or is there an approach you point people towards?
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. It's great to see you today. So on your, I'll start with the second question first. Yeah, Married People, we buy the book Married People by the case, because that book will help a marriage ministry leader understand, kind of capture a vision for how they can launch a marriage ministry in a church. And what's unique about Married People is they have a support system called their strategy pack that is behind it. So Married People is more than just a program. It's kind of a support system for marriage ministry. And And so, Tom, you're gonna have to tell me what was the first question again? I just blanked on it.
Putting your name on an event.
Oh, yeah.
And when do you do that, or don't you do that? And
Yes.
as a
Okay.
sponsoring organization.
Right. So we have a process that we use. We have a spreadsheet called Community Events Registry. So we have a team member that puts all the events in the Community Events Registry. And then 3 of our team members evaluate those events on 2 measures. That's quality and safety. We want to make sure that it's going to be a quality event, dynamic speakers, a lot of fun. It's a good quality event. And second of all, we want to make sure it's a safe event. What we mean by that is, like, a lot of people speak in the marriage space. A lot of times they're not educated. Just because somebody wants to advise couples, doesn't mean that they're really educated to do that. So we want to make sure it's a safe event for couples. So we measure on those 2. And then once we do come alongside an event, we like to use the word supported by. We like to say, here's Gary Chapman talking about love languages, hosted by First Presbyterian Church and supported by the San Antonio Marriage Initiative.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Great. Okay. And it looks like up next, we have a question from Amy. Amy, are you there? Okay, well, maybe she's busy for a moment. We'll go ahead and move. Oh, there you are. Okay.
I'm back.
Okay.
Is it me, Amy?
Yes, it's your turn.
Okay,
Amy.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
My question was, the last 2 couples that spoke today, just amazing testimony, and I love how they work together. Do they have other people on their team, or they work as a couple?
Are you speaking of the Vandebergs or the Angelos?
Yes.
Vandenberg?
Yes, both of them. Both of them.
Oh, both of them. Okay, I'll let them speak for themselves. So Jerry and Kate, if you guys want to go first, and then we'll have Brady and Melissa go.
Sure. Yeah, we've, as a matter of fact, on that last slide, there is a couple that we've kind of been mentoring, and they're now a part of our team. And they've even took the initiative to launch an annual marriage conference. So this year will be their 2nd annual marriage conference. So we're so proud of them. Once we're working on a few different grant opportunities, and we're hoping to expand and actually start hiring some extra folks too. So we're taking some of our volunteers, the faithful ones, and hopefully we can provide some more opportunity for them. But again, also on one of those slides there, we had a whole bunch of volunteers. So we kind of have people at different levels, some that are really invested. To answer your question, yes, we do have other couples, but then we also have a host of volunteers as well. How about you, Vandebergs?
Yes, we also rely heavily on our team. We couldn't do it all ourselves. We have a team of volunteers the same way that work with us, some at more capacity than others, and always looking to grow our team as the opportunities grow. But yeah, capacity grows as our team grows. And with our community initiative, we're expanding the vision and that unified purpose, and just always drawing people into and inviting them into working with us.
Yeah, always be on the lookout for couples of like-mindedness and that have that call. Maybe they just don't know how to serve. So being a friend to them, like Carl was saying earlier, you never know what could come out of that.
Great.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question, Amy. Up next, we have the Wilbanks from Tulsa.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for those great words from all of you. That was really fantastic. Jerry and Kate, I do have a question for you guys. You said that you have a technique that you use to remember people's names at that awkward moment. Can you share a little bit about that? I forget a lot of names.
You're muted,
Yes,
Jerry.
sometimes it's if I don't introduce her, then she knows that I don't know, I can't remember their name. That's kind of one way. And
So what he'll say, have you met my wife? And then I'll say, I'm Kate. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. And then they'll tell us your name again. And then Jerry will say, yes, yes. And then that'll probably jog his memory to say, and your wife so-and-so, and and then we'll reintroduce ourselves. And sometimes they can't remember either. So he'll say, have you met your wife? And I'll say, hi, I'm Kate Angelo. And then he'll be like, oh yeah, the Angelos. And then, it helps jog their memory too. And it's not so awkward.
That's right. Yeah. Have you met
That's
my wife,
great.
Kate, or have you met, the wife? Have you met my husband? And then name, and then that's the cue for them to ask.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Figure out some kind of system. You'll get it.
Thank you.
Also wear a button that says, hi, I don't remember your name either.
Yes.
Well, that's the other thing is most people aren't going to remember they'll be like, I've seen you 10 times, but I can't remember your name. And so just make sure you're introducing, I don't know if you remember me, but my name is, and then go from there.
I do introduce, I'll walk up to somebody, shake their hand, say, I'm Bruce Wilbanks. I should know your name. And so I've used that often. I like yours.
Yeah.
And it's about just honoring them anyway. It's about love, right? You want to, that doing that is it's kind of like guys when they're going on the first date, right? They plan everything out, they get everything figured out. Well, that's to honor the person that they're going out on a date with. Well, the same thing here is we're trying to honor that person and not, make them feel bad. So.
Right. Thank you.
Love that. Well, thank you for your question, Will Banks. And then up next, we have a question from Michelle Wright. So Michelle.
Thank you. Carl, you had mentioned a few minutes ago that you had a book that you give out to your ministers called Married People. Who is that by?
Yes, by Ted Lowe.
Thank you very much.
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, we just recommended that to the Wilbanks a couple of days ago.
Awesome. Awesome. Do we have any other questions in the room today?
I don't have a question, but I just kind of wanted to comment a little bit about what Carl said about serving those leaders that in our slides that Jerry was talking about, part of the reason that we are making ourselves known to the community leaders, the commissioners and the mayor and the representatives and everything is so that we can then go and help support their marriage too, because we know it's really difficult. We just have a new congressman who's in Washington, and now his marriage is probably going to have some friction, and who else can they trust except for people who he's already built a relationship with, who they know us because they have seen us. And so Jerry's able, he kind of chased Jerry across the room, so he could talk to him about, hey, if you need some prayer, Jerry could tell him, if you need some prayer, then we're here for you, because we want to support your marriage. And sometimes that means the world to them.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's good. Does anyone else have any questions for any of our speakers? Oh, I see Brady and Melissa, you have your hand raised.
So this is not necessarily pertaining just today, but it's about connecting. Carl, you had mentioned that you had a way to get mailing lists for your local churches. How do you get those mailing lists for connecting with?
Yeah, that's so there are mailing list companies that's all they do, and they do it mostly for businesses. But yeah, we bought what's called the All Church Mail List. So we got 1,400 church names and addresses for our community, and they constantly keep it updated for us. And ultimately, in cities, we like to do 4 postcards per year, which is just kind of gets people out of the woodwork. So that's a great way to connect.
Great. I see, Bill, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
When talking about prayer events, is this something you do just for your staff and your board, or is it a community-wide prayer event with a focus on a particular area?
So one thing that we do every year is Missouri Prayer Fest, and that's actually a very large event where we have about 500 people show up. And we have leaders from all across the state, whether they're social, political, or religious. And so we've made that an annual event. I think this will be our 4th year doing that. But we are also partnered up with the National Day of Prayer, and we do that at the Capitol also. And so we've just, built a relationship with those folks. And so I've been chairing that group and leading the team for that. But then there's also, if you're on social media, And you know, you'll see a lot of different events come across social media, and if you just, you know, pick some and go to them and start networking and building relationships there, you know, you can out of that, you know, observing and learning, then you can take what you've learned and create your own. And maybe you just invite some of the pastors in your local area or some leaders and just start your own, or partner up with ones that are already existing. You know, especially right now with the state of our culture, there are a ton of prayer groups and prayer meetings that are happening all over the US.
Thank you, Dave.
And you can turn any event into a prayer event if you just, you know, offer to pray for them. And you won't believe the number of people who will, like several of our pictures were impromptu. Can we go ahead and pray for you before we leave? And then more people just gathered up.
Love that. Thank you so much for your question, Bill. Does anyone else have any questions before we conclude our event for the day? Okay. It looks like that will conclude our training event today. And once again, we just want to say to you guys, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. And we hope that you enjoyed the training and that it's beneficial to your teams and to you. And don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything at all that we can do to support you. So have a great weekend, and we'll see you all soon. Bye.